Good afternoon. Welcome to the BCDA family. Uh, Hearing is resumed. For our opening remarks, I'd just like to welcome you and kung meron isang GOCC na talagang yung biblical principle na kung anong itatanim, yan ang aanihin, ay kayo yan. Because throughout the years, not only have you evolved into a very responsible GOCC, usually pag sinasabing gobyerno sa Pilipinas, nagkakautang-utang rather than nagkakaroon ng development income. And usually we look at, let's say, Singapore, no? But I think if all of the GOCCs were like BCDA, grabe din ang ating aanihin, no? I mean, of course, the SSS, GSIS is doing well. And I'm very glad po ng ating very much respected Secretary of National Defense is now chair of the board. So, uh, Chairman, Secretary, welcome po at magandang hapon sa inyo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Senator Cayetano, for having us here. Kami natutuwa dahil magkakaroon kami ng panahon para naman ipaabot sa inyo yung aming mga hinaing at saka yung gusto namin mangyari dito sa binabalangkas na panukalang batas ngayon. So,
Chair, before that, i-recognize lang nung COMSEC natin yung lahat na nandito.
okay.
But very good timing po kasi alam naman na natin na kapag start ng isang administrasyon, I know Jake will not blame the past administration because there are similar people. And I've known BCDA people since the inception dahil dun po sa mga informal settlers sa Taguig and development sa Taguig. Then nung naging congressman ako ng 1998, part ng distrito ko ang BCDA noon. So 25 years na rin, Sec. In fact, yung malaki naming kalye, yung Cayetano Boulevard sa Taguig, dahil yun sa pinahiram yung helicopter ng BCDA noon, so nakita namin na bakanting-bakante pa at pwedeng gawan ng kalye, no? So napakalalim na nung history, but I just want to do our part sa Senate, sa House, sa Senate, as Congress, kung how at the start of this presidency, this administration, we can give you all the tools necessary in accordance with his basic principles, no? Kasi in the same manner, si President Duterte noon had a policy not to sell land, no? He was a little bit hardline about that. And of course, sumusunod tayo kung ano yung policy. But right now, I think the policy is to be prudent but to maximize, di ba? Kung ano ang pwedeng growth ng BCDA dahil makakatulong ito sa AFP at sa buong bansa. So, Clea our COMSEC will just recognize everyone, and then afterwards, I'll give the floor to the chairperson and of course to our president. No?
Thank you, sir. We would like to acknowledge the presence of Ms. Joanna Castillo from the Department of Finance, Director for Corporate Affairs Group. From the Department of National Defense, we have Assistant Secretary Eric Lawrence D. and Assistant Secretary Emmanuel Ramos. From the Basis Conversion Development Authority, we have Chairman Delphine Lorenzana, President Jake Bingkang, Attorney Elvira Estanislao, Vice President Jocelyn Canyones, Vice President Erwin Kenneth Peralta, Vice President Dean Montalban. From the GCG or Governance Commission for GOCCs, we have Attorney Maria Lourdes Lobiano Alviola, OIC Legislative Division Office of the General Counsel, Attorney Aurel Dominic Narag, and Attorney Nessie Volante. From the Clark Investors and Locators Association, we have Dr. Francisco Villanueva Jr., Chairperson of Clark Investors and Locators Association. That's all, sir.
And of course, we have Engineer Joshua M. Bingkang, the President of BCDA, and former SND Chairperson Delphine Lorenzana. So, sir, you have the floor.
Pagpatuloy ko lang yung sinasabi ko kanina, Mr. Chairman, kami ang natutuwa na nandito kami ngayon. At importante kasi itong binabalangkas nating kalang batas to extend the life of the BCDA, at saka marami pa tayong pagbabago na gagawin sa mga dito na mamaya siguro lalabas natin. Yun lang po, Mr. Chairman.
Siguro, Chairperson, yung isa kong kinatutuwa na pagiging chairman nyo kasi ako magte-testify both as a former SFA Secretary, Speaker, and as a resident of Taguig and the husband of the Mayor of Taguig during the first half, then the brother of the Mayor nun. Talaga pong yung interest ng military ay tinutulak nyo parate, and yung resolution ng mga problema, whether it's with informal settlers, lupa ng military, yung welfare ng mga sundalo. So hopefully in this capacity, both of us will be able to help. No? So may I ask President Jake siguro, what we'll do naman, let's also recognize former BCDA President, former ano ba siya, Presidential Advisor on Flagship Programs and other titles, Vince Dizon. Welcome here. I thought hindi ka matatapos sa ka-meeting mo. Di ko na babanggitin. No, but welcome. Eksakto
Thank you,
lang
Mr.
naman.
Chairman.
So,
Apologies for my
no, no.
being late.
So I was
Apologies
just,
to my former colleagues.
ex-President Vince, I was just telling the chairperson na he's the perfect person at the perfect time kasi nga mababalanse niya yung pangangailangan ng AFP, yung pangangailangan ng retired AFP personnel na naging informal settler, yung pangangailangan ng BCDA. So sa lahat ng nanonood, we'll look for a win-win solution. Ang gobyerno naman na ito at kami ay hindi marunong talikuran ang kahit anong interest, no? Whether yan po ay yung mga residents ngayon na magkaroon kayo ng stability at sariling bahay, or whether po yung sa ekonomiya, or whether sa modernization. So I was just about to ask President Jake, and then maybe ex-President Vince can comment. Kasi the main question here is, what is the strength and weakness of your present charter? What are the other things you could do if we add certain provisions? And since talaga namang may corporate life naman under the charter, i-extend naman, isabay na natin yung mga reforms at saka yung mga pwedeng gawin. No? And I think most of them naman walang question, but we will give the DND the chance because over the years, meron talagang how do I put it, Sec? Kaya nga sinabi ko kayo yung tamang tao kasi iba talaga if you're representing the AFP side na active, AFP side na retired, and then BCDA corporate side, and then military na, let's say, nakapag tayo ng bahay doon. So it has a common denominator pero different enumerators eh. So and we'll try to find a win-win. So after you, siguro si Asek D, and then maybe si Vince can give us some insights into the weakness and strength. I think maybe a konting focus doon without yung not being able to sell land in Clark. Kasi napansin nga natin na ang nakinabang, good for the economy pa rin, pero nakinabang yung mga may-ari ng lupa sa labas ng Clark. No? So give us an outline, Mr. President, and feel free to say why you need that, and the committee will exert its best efforts to do this right away para kahit papaano may 4.5 years pa kayong i-implement to. No?
Thank you, Senator, Mr. Chairman. Of course, we are very happy on the good words you put up for BCDA. Maraming salamat po. Of course, it's also a challenge for us to keep the trust that national leaders like you po have on BCDA. And we are also very thankful na kayo po ang mag-sponsor ng aming bill on the Senate version kasi kilalang-kilala niyo po ang BCDA. If lalo na po when we were starting New Clark City, we need some big activity, parang a shot in the arm project that will make New Clark City very viable. Naalala ko po noon, secretary po kayo ng Foreign Affairs, kasama ko si President Dizon sa isang kwarto niyo po, sa si Ma'am Monica. Tinanong niyo kung kasi you were telling us that if we can host the SEA Games kasi yung susunod na mag-host si Vietnam ata, hindi ready. So tinanong niyo po kami dalawa kung pwede sa Clark, and we said yes, and you gave us full support, and of course the rest is history. We were able to host the SEA Games, and we were the number one, the champion. So maraming salamat po sa suporta ninyo. Ngayon po bumabalik po kami because you all know, times are changing, the needs are changing, but the objective remains the same. How BCDA can be an enabler for and a big catalyst for growth for the country. So kasama po ngayon sa ipipresenta po namin later on through presentation some basic amendments that BCDA need. Halimbawa po dito yung extension ng life kasi marami pa pong project na gagawin in New Clark City and in other ecozone that needs long-term partnership. The private sector needs certainty that the government will be hand in hand with them until the entire life of the project to make sure that there's stability and protection for their project. So isa po yun, yung extension po ng corporate life. And then second po, yung as we will also discuss later po, yung increase in capitalization kasi we need to book in our records the increasing value of the property of BCDA because as we develop more infrastructure, introduce more infrastructure into our properties, the value of our assets increases. And the last one po, ito po yung nabanggit po ninyo kanina, is to how we will be able to convert some of the areas in economic zone for residential use under a freehold arrangement. It's not just because to raise revenues. Isa po yun, malaking punto po yun. But on the other hand, it's really to give opportunities for the workers inside Clark nga po to afford affordable housing. So naging lesson po namin yan sa BGC, napakamahal, hindi kayang magkaroon ng property. Pero sa Clark po, more than 130,000 workers, 5% lang po ang tumitira sa loob. So we're giving them opportunities and address the other problems po on the transportation, on overpopulation sa labas. So this
President, I'll clear that up lang for the record kasi dun sa mga nanonood baka malito what housing opportunities, no? Correct me if I'm wrong, di ba? Kasi many na highly urbanized or nagma-massive urbanization, yung workers have to live 1, 2, 3 hours away.
Tama po.
Because nagmamahal masyado yung inside that development.
Tama po.
And then in the case of Clark naman, kung hindi natin papayagan na mabili nila,
Opo.
baka meron affordable pero nagre-rent sila.
Rent po,
So
tama po
imbis
yun.
na maipon nila at may mapundar sila,
Opo.
in the end, most of them will choose not to rent but will travel 30 minutes to 2 hours away. Sayang naman yung 4 hours with their family and then yung gastos, no? So what you want to do is to zone it in a sense that whether super high-end or very affordable for the workers, meron kayong area that they can buy.
Opo, exactly. That's what exactly po
So,
our objective.
so you said those three, two things pa, no? I was asking you informally kanina. Under the present charter, can BCDA partner with any other legal entity for a joint venture outside properties of the military?
We can, sir, if we will be asked by the national government, like si DOF po, before has asked us to jointly dispose a property that they own. So
Can we
can
clarify
also-
that? Kasi for example lang halimbawa Maharlika Fund, gusto nila i-fund isang train na siguradong kikita o isang highway na siguradong kikita, naghahanap ng partner. Doble ang pasok sa gobyerno kung BCDA yon.
Opo.
And you have the expertise. Kasi the Maharlika Fund will not manage it, di ba?
Yes,
They'll invest.
Yes, sir.
No, I mean, as a general rule, of course, they can choose to invest and manage. But as a general rule, they won't. So for example, sabihin nila, we need a new train from Manila to Clark or meron na yon. So let's say, sabihin nila, we want to build a train from Clark to La Union.
Yes.
And we want to build the airport in La Union para yung mga magbabagyo, kung bad weather sa Baguio, pwede mag-land doon. So, and instead of it just being a loan or the national government or the Maharlika, that they can do it with you. But
Yes.
I'll go even further than that, no? If it's not connected with BCDA properties, but it is a good corporate investment for you and for the country.
Yes.
Kasi eventually maghahanap ng partners eh.
Yes, yes.
So ang question ko, why does it always have to be the biggest Philippine companies?
Yes.
Na kudos for them, good for them.
Yeah.
They provide jobs, they pay taxes, pero kung pwede namang katulad ng BCDA kasi parang tumaas ang kilay ng mga kababayan natin if you think that GSIS and SSS some think it's not acceptable yung risk. But katulad sa BCDA, may track record kayo eh.
Yes.
'Di ba? Hindi kayo basta't sasali
Yes.
ng tingin yung palugi.
Negative
Diba?
financials.
So, that's one thing. Let's also look at that
Yes, sir.
side.
Yes, sir.
Secondly, yung sinabi mong authorized capital stock, no?
Opo.
So, right now ba, may limitation kayo sa kinita nyo? So for example, no, moving forward, let's say nga, there's a 5 billion peso highway and X and Y will partner with you and you have to put up 1 billion.
Yes.
Can you get that from yung mga kinikita nyo? Or it has to be in your authorized capital, di ba? So, ang point ko lang, take a look of different scenarios
Yes, sir.
because that might be how BCDA is going to evolve. If you look at
Yes,
many of the financial institutions or ano bang tawag nila sa Singapore, no? They're not sa China it's
Enterprise
SOEs, eh,
po.
di ba? But sa Singapore enterprises,
public
they actually
enterprise.
evolved eh,
Yeah.
di ba? So yung gagawa ng airport, at the start they weren't managers ng airport eh.
Yes.
Then they decided mag-split, di ba?
Yes, yes.
Tagagawa ng airport and then taga-manage.
Yeah.
Yung housing used to be one company.
Yes, sir.
But they realized na may specialization yung pagme-maintain. So split din nila yung enterprise nila.
Yeah.
So no one here knows what the BCDA will look like 15, 20 years from
Yes,
now. But what we do know is that if you don't innovate, you will die.
Yes, yes.
Diba? Whether it's a good death, meaning na-accomplish nyo lang, tapos-tapos na,
Yeah.
or whether it's a bad death, meaning ang ganda pa sana ng pwede nyong gawin, pero prematurely, we had to end the life of BCDA. So, can you include those 2 points?
Yes.
Your corporate people might have the answer already, but
Yeah.
maybe sa technical working group, let's just ensure na, I want to give you that liberty.
Oh, Yes, sir.
And you can put a check and balance. For example, if it's an investment outside BCDA properties, you need presidential approval.
yes, sir.
Diba? You can put safeguards like
Yes,
that
sir.
para hindi naman sabihin na we created a
Outside our boundary.
omnipotent
Yes.
corporation that is like the Maharlika Fund.
Yes.
But on the other hand, ayaw natin pag nandyan na yung opportunity, i-amend pa natin yung... Di ba? So for example, you personally, you have some expertise sa Clark Airport, di ba?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
O, alam mo, may magpa-partner sa inyo. Sir, tayo ng Pangasinan na airport.
Yes, sir.
Pwede bang mag-partner sa BCDA? You have the
Yes,
expertise
yes,
na
sir.
eh.
Yes, sir.
Eh baka sabihin ng chapter, hindi kasi hindi naman lupa ng BCDA yun, eh, di ba?
yes,
So,
yes, sir.
please include that kung
Yes,
sakali pa. You want to go to the presentation or before the presentation? After the, Yusek, Asek.
Mr. Chair, good afternoon. On the part of DND, we undertake to submit an unofficial position paper on the proposed legislative measures. But offhand po, one of the things we are looking at is to expand the representation of the AFP within the BCDA board, because within the 9-member BCDA board. At the same time, the Secretary of National Defense intends to realign the whatever share that may accrue to the AFP from the sale of lands, instead of having it accrue to the modernization program of the AFP, he intends to channel it into the AFP pension, the proposed AFP pension trust fund.
Yeah, that's most welcome. Yung lupa na to nanggaling talaga sa AFP, and of course our president, then President Ramos, who brainchild niya to, really intended na ma-modernize yung AFP at ma-represent talaga. So we'll take note sa technical working group to wait for the comments from the DND, no, and feel free, no, to really push for the interest ng AFP in not only the extension of the life, but in any of your experiences the last 25 years. No? Sige, Sec,
Thank you,
President
Mr. Chair.
Jake, we can have the presentation.
Thank you, Senator. So, can we flash on the screen the presentation? So, we're taking off, Mr. Chairman, on the approved House Bill 8505, or the Act on Strengthening the Basis Conversion and Development Authority. Okay, next slide. So this is the content of the House approved version. Basically, it contains the three proposed amendments that I earlier mentioned, which is number one, the extension of the BCDA's term to another 50 years. Second is the increase in the authorized capital of BCDA from 100 billion to 400 billion pesos, and declare 5% of the land area of each BCDA economic zone as alienable and disposable, and authorize its sale for residential use. The proceeds thereof shall accrue to BCDA. And then there's the fourth amendment introduced also during the last and final reading, which is the power to grant, donate, or alienate by gratuitous title real properties to any government institution or agency to be devoted exclusively for public use.
President Jake, before you go to the next slide, would you rather we comment at the end or okay lang as you go along?
Your pleasure,
As we go,
sir.
sige.
Yes, we go.
Anyone, please, kung meron kayong comment or insight, input, just press the mic. Sa akin lang, question ko lang doon yung 100 to 400B. Tama ba? I might be a little bit rusty sa corporate law ko, but iba kasi yung authorized capital dun sa paid up. So you can actually have a bigger authorized, but yung paid up mo
Yes.
lang is smaller. So
Yes, smaller.
you don't have to answer now, but we're not going to always amend the law. So kung gusto mo mas malaki dyan, if you intend the 400B to be the paid up, you can even go bigger. Kasi ang paid up mo lang is, tama ba? 25% of 25%,
Yes.
di ba? Something like that, no? So, some people might say kung 500B or 1 trillion yan,
Yeah.
ano yan? But
Yes.
actually, it might even be better. So
Yes.
take a look at it lang.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, next. So we've known that it's been 30 years. No, BCDA was created in 1992, and based on the time that has passed, we have contributed and made an impact to the country's economic development. Okay, next. So, and along the line, there were some amendments that were approved and were introduced into our charter. In 1995, there's RA 7917, which provide for the hinlarify po nito in distribution ng proceeds from the sale of Metro Manila cabs. And then in 2007, kasama na ho dito yung pagbabalik ng incentives in our eco zone, and also it defines the areas in Clark Freeport Zone and CSES, where in Clark Freeport Zone, it will be administered by Clark Development Corporation, and then yung Clark Special Economic Zone, si PESA naman at that time. Okay, next. So basically, our mandate based in our charter is to accelerate the sound and balanced conversion of former military bases like Clark and Subic into economic development. And we will raise funds through sale of portion of Metro Manila camps and apply said funds for the development and conversion to productive civilian use. And number three, to promote the economic and social development of Central Luzon, in particular in the country in general.
President Jake, dun sa timeline at saka dun sa economic, so apektado din kayo nung create law, no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
sir.
you're happy with that, or I mean, it's one thing for you to want something, it's another thing for the economic team to say yes. But ang point ko lang, feel free to propose it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And of course, the economic team can either say yes or no. But walang mawawala yung...
Yes, sir.
Di ba? Kasi points of view yan eh.
Yes, sir.
From the point of view of the economic team, parating
Yes, sir.
isa lang mag-approve order. But from
Yeah.
the point of view of, alam mo, BCDA,
Yeah.
we can get more if
Yeah.
we can offer more. No?
Yes, sir. You're correct, Mr. Sir. In fact,
So I'm not promising may mga
Yeah.
nakasmile na. I'm just saying walang mawawalang pag-usapan
Yeah.
natin, and we never know whether the economic team now has a
Yes.
different
Yes.
point of view, and we can look kasi yung effect ng create ng 2022 then
Yes, yes.
check now, di ba?
And we're happy, sir, that our partner, the locators of Clark is ably represented by their chairman here, so we can also hear the sentiments of our partners in Clark. So they would give us a better appreciation of the impact of Create Law to their businesses. Okay. Next. So we see that our contribution, while has made significant impact, but we need to do more under our charter in order to keep up with the needs of the country and support like the present administration in their economic socio-economic agenda. Okay, next. And we can also would like to continue to provide a strong support to our military, the modernization, build smart and inclusive communities, and also coming up with a better organization. So the first, so these are the big successful projects, no, that we have in the past through PPP. That's why many of the private sectors automatically they would want to partner with us through because of these successful projects flash on our screen. And in fact, I'm proud to say din po, like in the recent economic team roadshow in Japan 2 weeks ago, led by Secretary Jokno, Secretary Pangandaman, Secretary Bautista, Bonoan, Lotilla, and Uy. Si BCDA nga lang po ang GOCC doon eh. Lahat line agencies. And then when the Japanese national leaders and businessmen were asking what were the government's successful PPP projects. Kasi po baka mag-graduate na po tayo soon if maging upper middle income country tayo from ODA to PPP. So nakakatuwa po si Secretary Jokno, dalawa po yung binigay niya sagot at parehong BCDA po ang nakagawa, yung SCTEX saka yung Clark Airport. So we can see the based on the experience of BCDA, we can deliver big impact projects for the government. So next, so right now, in order for us to pursue long-term projects pa rin, we need to extend BCDA's term to another 50 years. The reason is that we only have remaining 19 years left, and we have already entered contracts which were approved by NEDA. These were approved by NEDA, some of the projects, and were cleared from DOF that have a concession life of 25 to 50 years. So the investors need to be reassured of that the government will continue to respect these contracts that were approved. Okay. So ito po next are some of the contracts that we have entered into. Mostly, these are utilities project and also partnership with big government agencies. Halimbawa po, si Central Bank. They will be relocating their minting facility from Quezon City to New Clark City. And they're asking at least 50 years of continued stay in New Clark City. So we need to ensure them that BCDA will be there to respect their stay and their use of the property. Okay, next, we also, through our project, continue to generate employment across ecozones. And also these are the existing and potential jobs that the BCDA can create in all of its ecozones. Next, so that's the first rationale on why we would want to seek the Congress support in extending BCDA's term to another 50 years. The second, this was also to allow us to donate by gratuitous real title properties to any government institution or agencies to be devoted exclusively for public use. Ang take-up po natin, kung maalala nyo po, si President Duterte signed Executive Order 119 in 2019 mandating all government agencies to put up satellite or backup offices in New Clark City. This is for resiliency. If something happened in Metro Manila, the government is always up and running to provide the basic services to the citizen.
May question ako dyan, President Jake. I understand you wanting them to move there, di ba?
Yes, sir.
Kasi nga, competition yan eh.
Yes,
So, yung iba gusto din nila dun mapunta sa kanila.
Yeah.
So, like the Supreme Court, inoffer ng Fort Bonifacio, inoffer sa Rizal, and then I think ino-offer sa Bulacan. Having said that, would you need to donate or to, I understand sell, kasi may income kayo doon. But wouldn't you rather have, let's say, a perpetual or a use of rock? Or if you donate, ilalagay nyo ba doon na if they use it for anything else, kailangan ibalik sa inyo? Di ba? Oo.
Normally, ganun po ang nilalagay namin if it's free use through use of rock, but any activities like commercial arrangement, BCDA should be afforded share in the revenues para naman po mabawi yung expenses that the
Yeah, but
BCDA
minsan kasi it gets complicated pag sa title. Kasi sa agreement, malinaw yon, di ba? So, remember that's the series of Supreme Court cases sa kaso dun sa educational, you have to. So I know this one is a more commercial. Ang point ko lang, I think it will be very clear if it's nasa title niya, let's say nasa PNP, but if you dispose or sell or use it for anything else, halimbawa nag-joint venture siya sa Ayala or Mega World, magre-revert. Pero mas magulo kasi pag sinabi mong halimbawa, pag may income, so halimbawa naglagay lang sila ng canteen
Yeah.
just for them.
No.
No, I mean, that's a good usapan nyo contractual sa
Yeah.
inyo.
Yeah.
Pero wala na yun sa titulo,
Yes,
'di ba?
yeah.
Kasi nga it doesn't violate naman that. So I can leave that to your people and
Yes.
our
Yes, sir.
technical working group. But can we clarify that kasi
Yeah.
baka yun ang maging tanong na pwede mo i-sell yung 10%.
Yeah.
Pero ito pwede rin ipamigay, paano kung malalaki yung
Yes.
iba dyan, 'di ba?
Totally
And then just to clarify another questions, for example, si POC President Bumble Tolentino is still after a piece of land dyan na pwedeng either POC or Southeast Asian Games museum or whatever, di ba? So, ano din usapan doon? Kasi nga, pag binok nila sa kanila naman na property nila, dapat klaro din sa kanila. But I don't doubt na mga yung katulad nun, nag-iisip din yun na may commercial din kahit papano. Whether it's a gift shop ng mga sporting equipment or it's a, di ba, something interactive na yung mga bata pwede pumunta with sports. Kasi nga, may maintenance din naman yung... So, I mean, you don't want an argument later on na, yes, sir, we made 10 million this year. Pero ang maintenance naman namin is 10 million. So, yung kinita namin pang maintenance din lang, no? But again, if it's intra-corporate and it's a commercial contract, that's between you. Labas na kami sa charter.
Yes.
But dun sa actual sa titulo, let's just clarify that later on.
Sige po.
Inaano ko na ngayon, I was going to reserve some comments for the TWG.
Yes.
Pero kung mapag-usapan naman natin shortly para mapabilis yung technical working group
Yes, sir.
natin.
I think, sir, one of the basis of why the House has introduced this is because of the introduction of creating a Philippine Sports Training Center. I think the House would want it to be located in New Clark City. But we cannot donate po kasi under our present. Whereas there's another government area.
No, agree. But again, we come to the... Kasi government to government naman yon, di ba?
Yes.
So in a sense, you lose the value of that property.
Yes.
So gobyerno din. So there'll come a theoretical question. Why doesn't the House just allot the money to buy it?
Yes.
And why don't we allow na bilhin? So I mean, I think more discretion, more scrutiny and more accusations later on.
Yes.
Pero kung klaro lang yung guidelines, pag government to government, ganito. Pag ganito, ganito. Di ba? Kasi like, if I was ASEC, di naman there, sandali lang. Ang problema sa government na ganyan, mawawala yung share namin.
Yes.
Unlike, for example, kung lagyan lang natin ng budget yung PSC and they will buy it for X, yung share ng military will still be
Yes.
there. So it's different pockets, but it matters to government kung kaninong, 'di ba? It matters to the AFP modernization kaninong
Yeah.
kaninong pocket, 'di ba? So let's
Yeah.
take a look at that. And theoretically kasi better than for them kasi like PSC, halimbawa if it's a 5 billion peso property, we allot 5 billion, then free din yung title nila.
Yes.
They wanna sell it later on when it's worth 25 billion. Hindi na sila yung, paano yan, babawiin ng BCDA pag hindi, di ba? So, let's take a look at that
Yes.
that side,
Yeah.
whether we want it that way, or we can just say that you can dispose
Yeah.
by sale or something like that. No?
Thank you, Mr. Senator. Because for us, that's the more preferred option. Okay. Next is if we continue, the increase in the authorized capital stock from 100 billion to
Sorry,
400.
Jake,
because-
clarify ko lang for the record kasi dun sa mga nanonood. Sa umpisa talaga, pag wala pa, di ba like sa Fort Bonifacio, di ba, yung mga simbahan doon and yung mga British school, Japanese school, sa umpisa pa talaga, pag ayaw pa lumipat, talagang iniengganyo mo sila. So talagang either cheaper or lease or concessionary muna, di ba? So just to but pag hot na siya, baliktad na. Hindi ka lumipat nung una, hindi ka nagsakripisyo. So magbayad ka ng tama. There might be just some confusion along the line na bakit yung agency na to? Bakit ang DOT? Nung panahon ni Sec Tugadi, lumipat sila lahat dun eh. Di ba? So definitely, kung hihingi sila, bibigyan mo. So just to put that on the record that there's a difference in objectives between getting people to move there and increasing the value and pag maganda na value na may gustong makakuha ng libre.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because right now, we have already exceeded our capitalization as shown in the next slide. Ours actual as of ending 2022 is already 113 billion pesos. And based on our projection for the next, say, 25 years, so the 400 billion is a safe.
Paid up yan.
Eventually, sir, yes. Yeah, yes, yes.
Yung ngayon, yung total capital of 2020 to 113, paid up yan. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes, now, yes, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's paid up capital. Okay, next. So we can continue to generate economic opportunities and contribute to the AFP and national government. So next slide will show that how much we have already remitted to the national treasury amounting to 84 billion and to the modernization of the military amounting to 59 billion. Just for this year, we have already remitted more than 3.3 billion for the modernization of military.
But President Jake, hindi diretso sa military yan, di ba? National.
National treasury.
Tapos
They
sila.
have a trust fund.
ASEC, baka that's one thing you want to look at. Yun ang naging medyo gulo nung panahon ni President FBR going to President Erap, yung bago kong pasok na congressman, na economic crisis nun. Kaya sinasabi lang kasi pinasok tong amount, but nahalo. So hinahanap ng military. Di ba? So that might be something you can work out with the economic team, but I don't mind sa charter na whatever amount is turned over and nasa GAA pa rin ng ng military pero
No, we'll take note of that, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think if I may just, based on our discussions with the AFP, especially during our tenure, and fortunately, SecDel was the D&D secretary at that time. I think BCDA was able to make it very clear to the AFP that the process of remittance is really the usual process of going to the national treasury and the national, but now, unlike during the time of former President Ramos, now there is an account, no, and I'm sure BCDA can. There is a trust fund, no. There is a trust. Wala kasi yan po dati. ito ay isa sa mga naging, I think, magandang mga ginawa ng BCDA at ng AFP para makorek yung naging problema
But
dati.
to use it, they need to appropriate it pa for the next year.
It will be appropriated in the
Yeah.
budget of the DND.
Yeah.
Kasama na po yan dun sa mga, pero ang nag-appropriate na po niyan ay ang department na, no? Alam ng
Hindi
department.
na, not Congress na.
Oh no, sorry. It is proposed in the National Expenditure Program
yes.
by the
Yeah.
agency.
So theoretically, di ba, if you turned over, let's say, itong March 5 billion, kung aabot sa appropriation for next year, maano pa natin ngayon for 2024. Pero pag hindi umabot, 2025 nyo
That's
pa
correct.
magagamit.
That's correct.
Diba? So, I'm just saying that that's a very good innovation na may trust fund na. But let's see if we can even do better. But sa akin lang, if the DND and the Finance and DBM can work it out, ako, I'm open. So like,
Yes.
if you say na nasaan program na siya, then pag pumasok ang pera, pwede nang gamitin. 'Di ba? So, kasi pag nasaan program, so for example, you say you're going to buy 1, 2, 3 ships. It will cost 5 billion. Pumasok yung pera ng July from BCDA. You don't have to wait for the next year or the year after to buy it kasi nasaan program na. 'Di ba?
Mr. Chairman, I think
Yes, sir.
you're correct there. Hindi ito papasok sa GAA. It's separate. It's outside the GAA. So pag pumasok diyan, nakalagay sa trust fund ng AFP. Pagka kailangan namin, we'll just inform the DBM so that they can release it to us. So
Anyway, Sec,
okay na po siya ito.
yun naman, babalik ako dun sa opening natin. You're the perfect person at this season and this time to be there. Ang akin lang po, kung meron pong innovation na pwedeng gawin, at with the charter at pumayag naman yung economic team, I'm okay with it, Sec. Go ahead. Ano?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then the last item, which is for us very critical, is to declare in the House they allocate around 5% of the land area for each BCDA economic zone as alienable and disposable, and only for residential use. The proceeds thereof shall accrue to BCDA. Because we understand for institutional, commercial, industrial, they're neutral to whether it's freehold or leasehold because they have other priorities like cost of labor or cost of utilities. But for the residential, it's really difficult to invite real estate developers to go inside our eco zone because of the limitations on the ownership. Alam naman ho natin, ang mga Pilipino, hindi pa ho sila sanay sa konsepto ng leasehold. Because for them, for us Filipinos, like us, the greatest accomplishment you can have is to own your own house because naipapamana.
But to be fair to Filipinos, President Jake, it's also relative to anong ma-offer sa labas.
Yes.
Diba? So I mean like Singapore,
Yes.
yes, sabihin mo na sanay sila sa innovation, but anywhere kasi in Singapore,
Is all-
the same.
Yes.
Diba? But
Yes.
kung sasabihin mong sa Subic pwedeng bumili, sa Baguio pwedeng bumili,
Yes.
sa Metro Manila pwede, pero sa Clark freehold,
Yeah.
doon nagkakaroon din ng
Yes.
diferensya. Pero kung sasabihin mo freehold na buong Pilipinas, diba? I don't think BCDA would be asking for that.
Yes.
Let's take a 5-minute break, but 2 questions when we get back, or kahit 3-minute break lang. One is why residential lang and why not mixed use? Especially because uso na ngayon na yung
Yes.
condo mo
Yes.
ay may mga
Yes.
and
Yeah.
if you look at ano, 'di ba, one of the best priced condominium is the one with Shangri-La, yung Horizon.
Yes. Mixed
Pagbaba mo kasi nasa High Street ka
use.
na.
Yes. Yes.
But nung nagbukas yung Mitsukoshi at saka lapit niya sa Uptown,
Yes.
yung Hyatt Residences
Yes.
is,
Also.
'di ba, is
went
also
up.
very. So I mean, it also helps you with your price, with the taxes, with the ano, kung papayag ka ng certain na mixed use.
Yes. Yes.
And then second question ko is the 5% kulang or sobra vis-a-vis your master plan? Kasi madaling magbigay ng percent eh.
Yes.
Pero it really depends sa master plan mo.
Yes.
Let's take a 3-minute break tapos
Yes.
let's go back to that. We'll just suspend for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
let's resume. So, you want to start with yung 5%. Is that in accordance with the plan? Kulang yon, sobra?
Basically, Mr. Chairman, the 5% is commensurate to the plan development in Clark. But if
Sorry,
we
is
will
that 5% of the whole Clark or 5% of something?
5% of the whole Clark,
Okay. And presently, the whole Clark is
35,000.
so 5% is
Yeah.
minus 4, so 26. So assuming lang,
30,000,
assume na
yes, sir.
natin sa 26,000.
Yeah.
So 10% is
2,600.
100.
So 5% is around
1,300.
1,300. So in the master plan areas, tama po yung
okay.
5%.
So vis-a-vis ko sa kabilang question. Pero pag minix use mo yon,
Yeah.
pwede ng 10 or
Yes, sir. Thank you for pointing out. When we say residential po kasi, it does not mean just the purely residential, the landed or the residential. Right now, we are also considering mixed-use residential because it will generate higher value for the
and
disposition
so
of
if it's
land.
mixed use residential,
So we need the 10% po.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
8 to
So
10%.
just give the justification.
Yes, sir.
Diba? And then maybe a sample of the plan
Yes, sir.
para lang when we defend it sa floor, makita na nila. I mean, I'm a little bit familiar
Yes, sir.
vis-a-vis the development of Fort Bonifacio,
Yes,
diba?
sir.
So nakita naman natin doon,
Yes, sir.
you know, so but this 5% won't be in one area, no?
No,
So
sir.
ikakalat nyo yun.
Yes, sir, ikakalat
So you'll
namin,
have
sir.
mini townships.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Everywhere.
That's why we will provide the development plan that you mentioned to show that they are equally and properly distributed in the entire pre-port zone and economic zone. Kasi ang gusto po namin dito, walkable development, people to reduce carbon footprints and also the need for transportation. So people can just walk within their places of work to their residences.
Before can I interrupt you and recognize lang former Secretary Vince. But before that, Secretary Vince, I just wanted to mention pala, I might forget Chairman at saka si President. I was in a conference sa Singapore. Then someone was presenting it was about transformation. You know, about national transformation, community transformation. Tapos may nagpakita sa fort. Basically, pinakita yung pictures just like 10, 15 years ago. Then suddenly yung skyline na panay. And, you know, with just that one picture, you know, it really spoke 1,000 words. No? So my point is, maganda yung pinakita mo na 5 kanina na PPPs na successful. But I think if you put a date, kasi to be fair sa BCDA, mabilis. So halimbawa sa New Clark City, dun sa Vince, you built that in 18 months, di ba? So I mean, it's an additional, if you showed yung bakanting lupa ng 2018 and then yung finish ng 2019, di ba? Kasi nga, even sa Fort Bonifacio, time goes so fast, sometimes so slow. But hindi mo nga, I remember in year 2000, 2001, when they wanted to put up a casino, halos walang building talaga dyan eh. So when you show yung bakante, ito bakante pa ng 2005, I didn't go much to Arca South dung pandemic. But nung election nung 2022, nagulat ako sa dami ng building. So I think yung potential partners nyo, whether it's Singapore, Japan, US, Europeans, magugulat din gaano kabilis din tayong pwedeng gumawa. Kasi minsan phenomenal yung tira sa atin na mabagal, na hindi na ayos yung right of way. Like the Japanese, di ba Vince? How many times sa Prime Minister's office, paulit-ulit sila, what about the right of way? What about the right of way? What about di ba? Sige, Secretary Vince, then we'll go back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you very much to the chairman for the invitation, and also I'm very happy to be here with my former colleagues at BCDA. Really, to me, the most professional and hardworking people that I've had the privilege of working with in government. First of all, Mr. Chairman.
By the way, Vince, you worked with me in my office.
Of course,
so,
of course.
So mas professionals.
Naipit ako doon.
Pinagsasabong mo yung dalawang...
Naipit ako doon. But Mr. Chairman, I think, first of all, I think during the past administration, we were really trying to push for the amendments and the reforms that that are being presented here today, and I'm personally very, very happy to see them getting there. No, I think it's very important for the reasons that you mentioned and that were mentioned by Chairman Dell and President Jake. Let me just maybe highlight three things that I think are make this very, very important. When we started po in BCDA in 2016, our chairman then, Chairman Greg Garcia, came up with a very, I think, very poignant and very meaningful mission statement for BCDA, and that was to build to strengthen the armed forces of the Philippines while building great cities. And I think those two things really encapsulate what BCDA is all about. Is first and foremost, it was created to help the armed forces modernize, and second of all, it was meant to really create and build these great cities. And of course, the greatest among them is in the senators and in the speakers.
And you totally
hometown
redeemed yourself.
Of Taguig. Of Taguig. So, so ano po yan, no? Napaka-importante po talaga. And as you said very well earlier, that, you know, organizations always have to innovate and develop and change. And I think this is one way by which BCDA feels that it needs these reforms in order to be able to take it to the next level. The first thing po is with respect to our first mandate, which is to really strengthen the armed forces. And I think it's already in the bill, but I think we need more permanent representation of the armed forces in the BCDA. And with your permission, Chairman Dell, I think you would agree that permanent representation in the board of the armed forces makes certain that, you know, the armed forces' interest is always protected in BCDA. And I think in the bill there is some ratio to the number of board members that will be reserved for former members of the armed forces. No, I think that's very, very important po. Second of all, Mr. Chairman, I think now that I am wearing a different hat, I'm now with the private sector, it has become more, I think, more clear to me on how important incentives are for the private sector, especially during this period where economic growth needs a great boost, and I think it can really come from attracting investment, both domestic and foreign direct investment. But for this, we really need to be competitive, Mr. Chairman.
So you agree na may epekto talaga yung create sa
I think
competitiveness.
from in my
And now you can speak not as a advocate of BCDA, but from the private sector.
I think there needs to be, and I think I am not an advocate of making, let me make it very clear to the committee, Mr. Chairman, that I am not an advocate of making BCDA special, meaning to have incentives in BCDA areas that are over and above what is currently in create. I'm not for that. I just feel that having had the year and a half being in the private sector now, I think there is much to be desired in how we implement the current law. I think the law is sound and is works, but I think there are some issues, like, for example, on the issue of VAT for industries that are VAT exempt under the CREATE law. I think there are some challenges there, Mr. Chairman, and I think there are measures now in both Congress and the Senate which are trying to correct that. But I think that needs to be corrected quickly.
I'll engage you with a 1 minute on that, no? Kasi the mere nature of incentives, is there something special about this? Diba? So for example, if you say, Marawi, maglagay tayong incentive doon. Kaya ka nga naglalagay because in the normal course, the companies will not go there. Diba? That's why from the time of FM Senior, my father was administrator of EP sa panon na naging PESA. That's why they chose Bataan. Cebu noon was not the Cebu we know today. If it was the Cebu we know today, baka hindi doon nilagay yung EPSA ng Cebu. Ganon din sa Cavite. It's not the Cavite we know today. So, I hear what you're saying, 'di ba? Parang sa constitution, 'di ba? Na all things equal, dapat equal din yung pagtingin natin. But pag hindi naman equal, there's a reason bakit hindi equal. So for example here, no? If we give incentives to Clark Airport, ang Bulacan at saka ang NAIA, let's say ang Bulacan and halimbawa, if they put up Shangli at hindi na yung NAIA, that those two airports will be completely private. Pero ito, it will be catering to the 30,000 no. So for me, parang between favoring the private sector and favoring the lupa na pagmamay-ari ng gobyerno, parang clear naman sa akin, if i-favor ko gobyerno, bakit? Private yun ito. No? So, but I think we're saying the same thing, na you're not saying na BCDA should have better incentives than PESA. Diba? But sa akin naman, what I'd like dun sa technical working group is that yung peculiarity of certain incentives that you need. Because nga, people will say na ang Clark next BGC, but they forget that BGC is in the heart of Metro Manila and it's the whole Fort Bonifacio is what over 500 hectares, and then yung BGC itself is what 117, 'di ba? 170. But here you're talking about 26,000 hectares. So hindi apples to apples yung doon. So go ahead. I just wanted
Mr.
to
Chairman, you're absolutely correct, no? But I think the CREATE law provides a sound framework, no? I think there are, and Dr. Villanueva is here, who represents the locators of Clark. I think there is really just some issue in how it was eventually executed and implemented, no? And I think that's another debate, no? That's another discussion. But again, I think that's just so important, Mr. Chairman, no? The incentive structure must be very clear, must be without room for discretion, meaning hindi pwedeng gamitin sa, para ipitin ng mga investors. Kailangan very, very clear yan. And I think that's the purpose then of what BCDA is trying to do. Which actually your point about, bakit, tanong ko din yan kasi Mr. Chairman, nung pumasok ako nung 2016 sa BCDA, sabi ko, bakit yung BGC ang bilis nag-develop, no? At yung Clark parang medyo mabagal. And I came to realize that it wasn't really actually because of lesser incentives, that it was really actually because of one very, very important issue, which I think President Jake and Sec Del are trying to address now. And that's the issue of land, of land ownership, or land, yung instruments, no, that are available for people to invest in Freeport zones like Clark and others, no. And this is the third thing that I wanted to emphasize po, how important it is. In fact, to my mind, mawala na po lahat ng mga babaguhin sa BCDA kung ito po ay mapasa. Just by this alone, it will trigger huge, maniwala po kayo, Mr. Chairman, I firmly believe that if this is passed, whether it's 5%, 10%, as long as there are controls in place that I'm sure BCDA can implement very efficiently, you will see massive and very fast developments in Clark, in John Hay, in Poro Point, in all these, just with this amendment alone. Mr. Chairman, nung pong sinimulan namin nila President Jake, yung talagang pag-pupush ng infrastructure build-up in Clark, yung airport, yung Clark City, the roads there, and the other facilities that were built. Alam niyo po, ang napansin namin, halos lahat po ng developer, ng malaking developer sa Pilipinas, isa lang po ang ginawa. Nagbilihan po lahat ng lupa sa labas ng Clark. No, ngayon po may Ayaga na doon, meron na pong Robinson.
And President Vince, to be fair to me, sinabi ko sa inyo yun during that time.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Sinabi ko sa inyo yun na ba't hindi kayo maghingi ng amendment?
Yes.
Dahil nga namimili na sa labas at iba presyo. But two factors then, just for your side. One, medyo ayaw talaga ni President Duterte to sell. Number two, yung ginagawa niyong condos with the Koreans, etc., the investment, it was selling naman. 'di ba?
In
But
fairness po, I mean, if you compare Clark in 2015 and Clark now, ang dami na pong residential doon, na madami na. But they are mostly developed by foreigners, mostly by Koreans.
who are happy to have the
Who-
25 or 50-year lease,
Yes,
'di ba?
yes.
Compared sa heavy investment ng mga Pilipino.
Correct.
'Di ba, like certain people might have 5 condominiums in Makati, 10 in Taguig, 'di
And
ba?
hindi lang po yun, Mr. Chairman. Meron din pong Pilipino na bumibigay o nag-lease for 25 years. Pero po, mostly they are second homes. They are weekend homes only.
Just to whet the taste buds of your financial people. Yung latest sale sa sa condo hindi lupa sa Fort Bonifacio was 880,000 per square. 880,000 per square, 'di ba? Magkano per square sa Clark nung condo? I mean, it's not apples to apples
Kung ano
dun
po,
sa
kung
mga
lease
nanonood.
po siguro, you're probably talking about anywhere between 70 to 80,000,
Yeah.
I would think.
Which is a good amount for
Good amount.
for lease, 'di ba? But makikita mo ngayon, and I remember nung presyo nung lupa hit 500,000 in BGC. I think ngayon yung latest is 1.7. When it hit 500, I told myself will I be alive nang mag-hit ng 1 million per square, no? And then it just kept going up. So just to yung appetite nung nagko-compute sa inyo, pati yung inyong authorized capital stock. Pag nag-boom yan at naging hot yan, that's why in Taguig since 2009 hindi kami nagre-revise ng real property taxes. We just want people to keep investing and to enjoy living there, di ba?
Mr. Chairman, actually, ano po, tama po kayo ron. You were one of the first who told us at that time na, it's very important for us to find a model that allows for the private sector to come in. And when we say private sector, we're talking about the local developers to come in. But it needs to be a similar, if not the same model as BGC, which is a joint venture, but the land can be sold. No, kasi alam naman po, ang mga Pilipino, hindi po talaga tayo, although sa mga ibang developed countries in Europe and maybe in countries where limitado ang lupa like Singapore, Hong Kong, napakasanay po nila sa lease. Sa atin po, unfortunately, para tayong
Yeah, sanay sila sa lease. Kung lahat ng mabibili mo doon,
lease lang.
Pero kung yung investment mo dun sa lease, let's say average 20% increase over 5 years, dun sa sell, nagdo-double over 5 years, 'di ba? Wala namang investor na dun mamimili sa
Tama po.
baka magbumili siya not investment, may sentimental siya or he wants to live near the 'di ba?
Yes.
But in terms of investment, you really look at yung pinakamalaking return at sa Pilipino importante mapamana mo.
Mapamana, yes. Opo. So I think dun po and napakaganda din po ng point nyo kanina about mixed use. Kasi nga po ngayon, ang trend na nakita naman natin sa BGC is talagang mixed use na ang development. And I would really fully support a amendment that would allow for BCDA to sell mixed use land. No, kasi po and we've seen it po. It's not like it's working on hypotheticals. Hindi po to hypothetical. Sigurado po tayo na kapag nabago ito at BCDA, I'm sure they will know how to dispose naman. Hindi naman nila bibiglain yan. Kasi hindi naman din maganda na ifa-flood mo yung market bigla ng 1,500 hectares of land. Hindi naman maganda yon. Magandang gawin yon. Dahan-dahan. The developers, the biggest developers in our country will definitely come in and really develop Clark and
sorry
other.
to interrupt but kasi nga dun lang sa mga nanonood and everything na while it is true that for example let's say inopen nyo 1,000 hectares and 10 developers bought 100 hectares each or so if you opened 1,000 hectares or you open 100 hectares and 10 developers bought 10 hectares each while it's true that you sold it on a certain amount, we tax them naman So habang tumataas din real property at merong income tax. So hindi rin naman totoo na naiiwanan yung gobyerno. Of course, mas maganda talaga kung pwedeng parang yung developer, 'di ba? Bibili siya ng 50 hectares, phase 1 niya, mura lang yung 5 hectares, susunod 10. But that's the cost of their development. Doon nga sila kumikita. So just if you start selling it per phase, hindi ka rin assured na bibilin at that price nung developers, 'di ba? So you really have to, so kung ganun din ang gagawin nyo, and it will seem on paper that you make more, they'll probably buy it if they can buy 1,000 hectares outside at 200 per square. Sa'yo, they can only buy 10 hectares at 500 per square. The next 5 hectares, they have to buy at 10,000. The next at 20,000. Maganda on paper, pero hindi mangyayari. No? So I just want to put that flexibility there, President Vince. Kasi nga, market forces talaga in the end. Diba?
Opo. And market forces po talaga, and I think we can have full trust and confidence in the capabilities of the institution to really do it, and to partner with the private sector. I think that's the critical part also. And BCDA has always been open to partnering and working with the public sector. They've done that in BGC, the most successful, I think, real estate development that the country has ever had. But my last point na lang po is about job creation naman po. No? Ngayon po, pinupush ng BCDA ang New Clark City as a major industrial hub. Kasi po, and nakita naman po natin ito na ang mga malalaking mga industrial developers, una ang hinahanap nila malalaking lupa. No? And ang malalaking lupa po, available lang talaga sa New Clark City. It is one of the very few areas in the country with the infrastructure, proximity to the airport, proximity to the major highway, and there are huge tracts of land that are available. Ngayon, hindi naman po kailangan mag-freehold ng industrial. Sa industrial po, walang problema ang lease. That's why Figinvest and other industrial players are coming to New Clark City. Pero ang pinaka-importante po, yung saan titira at saan mamumuhay ang kanilang mga employees, ang kanilang mga workers. At kung hindi po papayagan ang sale, mahihirapan po talaga. Ang mangyayari po talaga is maghahanap na lang po ng ibang ang pagtatrabahuan ay pagtitirahan yung mga empleyado ng industrial park na yun. But the problem there is kung hindi sila proximate do sa kanilang place of work, babagal po ang pagdevelop. And we are seeing that now. No, nakikita po natin, nahihirapan po ang Figinvest na talagang mag-attract ng mga locators, industrial locators. Kasi ang unang tanong ng mga malaking kumpanya, pagkatapos nilang tanongin, may lupa ba? Is, saan titira yung aming mga trabahador? And
kasi everything else is perfect sa Clark, no? Yung
Yes.
security,
Everything po.
utilities, 'di ba? Access to the airport,
Opo.
access to the expressway. So in the end, yung
Opo.
yung convenience and safety ng employees.
Opo.
No?
At hindi lang po yun, pati po kunyari yung pong central bank ay gustong maglumipat na sa Clark. Ang unang tanong din po nila, saan po pwedeng tumira ang aming mga empleyado? And the beauty of that is once you are able to create that boom in residential, everything follows po yung mga kainan, yung mga commercial, yung pong mga iba't ibang mga kailangan para mabuhay, everything follows. And it will create a very virtuous cycle of development in that area. So, yun lang po, Mr. Chairman. At
Thank you very much for
maraming
that. No? President Jake, with your permission, lilipat muna ako kay Dr. Villanueva just because napag-usapan na yung incentives. But before that, something to think about lang and think about it long term. Sabi kasi ni ex-President Vince, bakit ang fourth, ganun ang development, yung iba hindi? Nakita niyang isang element is yung land ownership. May isa pa akong element na itatapon sa inyo. Noong 2000, gusto nila magtayo ng casino doon, hindi kami pumayag. When I say kami, yung residents. If a casino was built doon, it would be a very different look. Kasi yung mismong tatabi and everything, no? So I'm not criticizing per se yung casinos in Baguio, in Clark, in Subic. Ngayon wala. But every time maglalagay sila sa Baguio, nagkakaroon ng sakuna. And anyone, I mean like right now, 'di ba? They're discussing sa Malaysia ba? 'Di ba? Sa Singapore it was very controversial. And then ngayon, I think they're discussing it sa Malaysia. So there's a pro and con, but I'm just saying, as the people heading this very good institution, this very successful I mean, if all of the GOCCs in the Philippines was like BCDA, even yung NAPOCOR before and NFA, etc., wala sana tayong economic crisis eh. Baka aside from OFWs, GOCC sana ang humatak eh. But the reality is we have mixed experiences with GOCCs. Anyway, just to put it on the record at pag-isipan nyo rin, there are certain businesses that talaga that dictate yung whole feel, look, and yung blessings dun sa area na yon versus the others. Dr. Villanueva, sir, as the representatives ng mga locators, please feel free to speak about anything in the charter or the incentives, etc.
Okay. Let me start off by saying that what this country needs right now is more foreign direct investment and a stronger, timing, and a stronger national defense. And I think BCDA has played a vital role in both fronts. And I'm saying this as somebody like you na saksi sa BCDA because I am a stakeholder, taga Clark ako in that area. I've been with the investors for so long. And I also belong to the BCDA family for 9 years, serving as a director of CDC. So I'm quite aware with the mileage that we have gotten from BCDA and it's the rest of its family. And I'm glad to see na, like you said, it's a vessel right now that's carrying a lot of assets. Now, the assets have outgrown the vessel. And tama nga ho yan, it's just proper. Number one is we let BCDA is a great thing that's happening for us. We'll extend its life and we'll expand the vessel. And I think your observation is correct. Yung 400 billion, baka bitin pa ho yan. Because they are holding on to precious real estate property and at the exponential home growth rate niyan. If things go as planned, baka in 5 years from now, bumabalik na naman sila sa Congress asking for growth. And the point about freehold it also makes sense because we've already asked yung Ayala and all that. Why aren't you investing here? Freehold. That's the key part.
So agree po kayo that a certain percentage
Yes.
i-open na natin for mixed-use residential.
Of course. Kasi right now, one of the things that's going against Clark is it used to be a military base kaya may buffer siya ng 8 kilometers. From the gate to the main area, 8 kilometers. So, pag pumasok pa tayo sa New Clark City, that's a much... So, if people have to live outside and go inside, talagang hindi na pwede kasi the urban sprawl philosophy of designing is no longer applicable. Modern urbanization dictates now that we have self-contained communities where people live, where they work, and I think we cannot achieve that unless we offer some of this for mixed-use development. Not to mention, and it was mentioned already, yung carbon footprint ho natin mababawasan ho talaga. About 10 years ago, I did a study on the carbon footprint of Clark. At nagpapalaki ho rito is the trouble that people will have to go through. At the same time, lalo na yung mga other industries, problema nga nila ngayon lagi is how to transport people. From a lot of yung mga locators ho natin, they even have buses and all of this. And then of course, it's also, I'm very happy that you mentioned Create also. So hopefully again, Create was a product, the law itself was a product of 3 years dialogue between Congress, Senate, and the stakeholders. At maganda naman ho, however, yung sa IRR and sa certain BIR, when a lot of complications came out. So we hope we can streamline this because we need policy stability. And that's why we need to fix that and we need to keep BCDA on track. Kasi kapag nawala ho yan, mag-iiba na naman ang usapan.
So maybe I should have a private conversation before the BIR. Kasi iba naman yung kailangan i-change yung law or yung charter, iba naman yung sa interpretation na may communication. Diba?
Kasi ho, ang kwan lang ho
So we don't need to recreate. We just need to
smoothen smoothen it up a bit, sir. Yung kwan lang naman number one is yung original intent ng law masunod lang. And then the other thing, especially on the sunset provision.
Okay.
I think
Sige
that
po.
was
And on that point, President Jake, as you continue, I just want to acknowledge na napakaganda din ng inyong biking lanes. You know, it's not yung for the record lang, 'di ba, President Vince? Marami kasi even ano, 'di ba, yung lalo yung di ko naman blame yung existing cities including our own na nung sinabing mag-biking lane, kinuha mo lang yung sa existing. But sa inyo, talagang kasya yung dalawang kotse doon 'di ba? So that also goes to your preparation pag pinayagan na yung mixed-use residential. So actually sa laki ng Clark, kahit sa loob ka nakatira, uh, you still need transportation, but with those roads, not only is it very safe, it's convenient to actually use bike. I think si Senator JV is dedicated to going to work on a bike. So, you know, baka minsan maimbitahan nyo rin sa Clark for that, no? Sige, President Jake, you wanna continue and wrap up?
Yes, sir. Okay,
Para
sir.
maunahan nyo rin traffic.
Yes, sir. This is the last item, but we will definitely provide you with the master development plan, the analysis on why we are requesting additional coverage of land from 5% to 10%, and also to make sure that there will be safeguards. Kasi baka ang fear talagang left and right binebenta ang lupa, but under our management, we will make sure that there will be a proper steward of the assets entrusted to us. Like number one, should we be able to get approval on the conversion of land from leasehold to freehold, first, we should have a master development plan. So properly define kung saan ho dito yung mga residential, mixed-use residential in support for the commercial, institutional, and industrial. So kailangan po properly distributed siya para hindi overly dense sa isang area at hindi naman para napabayaan yung isang side. And then second, siyempre po yung release po ng mga land ay based on a phasing plan. We don't want, as mentioned by President Dizon, we don't want to saturate the market with oversupply. So, and then that will also enable us to price properly the value of the land, enabling us to generate the maximum value for the government. And pangatlo, we will ensure that we will submit regular updates and also to the Office of the President on the disposition every year so that they will also be aware on the proper disposition of the assets entrusted to us. So in the next slide, pinapakita lang po namin dito kung magiging ilan na, if 10%, at yung possible na revenues that can be raised through sale of this asset for the next 50 years, from as low of 900 billion to a high of 2.9 trillion. And this can support po yung bigger problems ng national government. Halimbawa nga po yung nabanggit kanina ni ASEC ng DND yung sa pension plan. So we are open to discussing on how to support the solution that the Department of Finance is looking into this pension plan shortage. And also, this will also provide support dun sa pambansang pabahay ng Pangulo. And we already signed an agreement or an MOU with DSUD where BCDA through its assets in Clark can provide thousands of housing units. These mass housing units can also provide opportunities even for minimum wage earners to afford ownership inside the property. So ito po yung mga basic major amendment that we are pursuing and we seek your support, especially under your committee, Mr. Senator.
Yes. Yeah, well, you have the support naman, President Jake, at maganda plano nyo. Two quick questions sa regulation. So dun sa area na yung ownership nag-change dun sa ancestral lands, no, sa indigenous, but the regulations as to building is still with BCDA or nalipat din yan?
Lipat po. Wala na po. Hindi na kami pinapansin.
You might
doon.
want to check that and include that. Kasi for example, even private lands under the LLDA is subject to LLDA regulation. Kasi kung watershed yan at maapektuhan din yung
Yes.
buong yung development, baka that's something we can cover in the law. Na yes, ownership sa kanila, but regulation dito pa rin. Which goes to my second question na nakatali dyan, that I want you to look at then in the technical working group. It just so happened that FBDC, the Ayala Group, and Mayor Lani works well together. Kasi if you remember, one of the major disappointments was that if the city of Taguig issues permits that were disapproved by, what's the name? BGCA ba? What's the... Yeah, by
Bonifacio Estate Services.
Bonifacio Estate, di
BESC.
ba? BESC, di ba? So, ang nangyari kasi doon, Sec, nag-agree sila. Hindi pipirma ang City Hall pag hindi muna pumirma yung BESC. Para yung FAR at lahat ng development masunod. Kasi nga, inexplain sa City Hall na one floor is worth more than 100 million, but computed kasi yung development sa traffic, sa sewerage, di ba? Ang nare-regulate lang doon na pataas pababa, yung kuryente. Kasi the same wire can give you more voltage. But for example, yung kalye, pag computed to for 10,000 cars, hindi ka pwede magdagdag ng floor tapos sabihin mo, hindi magtra-traffic, pwera pa yung manggagaling sa labas, di ba? So, study that so that I have no doubt very good ang relationship nyo sa dalawang governor na nakakasakop sa inyo. But remember, we're all mortal eh. We'll not always have Vince Dizon or Sec Lorenzana or Engineer Jake as president, and they won't always be the same governor. So if has to be some clarity in traffic, in building permits, etc., we're willing to work with them naman na win-win, na acceptable. No? In the case of Taguig, simple naman eh. Both have to sign. Diba? So may check and balance doon. No? So even if baliktad, yung BESC ang may gustong i-violate, hindi pwedeng walang pirma ang city and vice versa. Gusto nung city i-violate, ayaw i-violate nun. May di ba, may check and balance ka. No? Yeah. Anyone else would like to make a formal appearance or statement? Kung wala, Mr. Chairman and President Jake, assign na lang kayo na magwo-work sa technical working group. We'll use the House version as our base. Siguro yun lang change natin, Comsec Clea, yung 10% tapos mixed use, tapos yung mga nabanggit ngayon, di ba? So give us siguro maybe by Friday next week we'll send you yung comments and then draft. Tapos let's work from there. And kasi until mid-November naman nakafocus to sa budget. So even if we finish it, hindi naman maso-sponsor to. But let's try na right after the budget or kung masisingit sa budget, mas-sponsor na natin and try to get it passed before the end of the year. Thank you very much, everyone. God bless you. So the committee hearing is now suspended muna.